Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Barber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and we were treated to a couple of primetime football games yesterday, so we're going to react to those, and then we are going to give our first edition of our contender rankings now that we are 2 weeks into the NFL season. This is going to be a bi-weekly thing for us throughout the year. But before we get into that, let's talk about a couple of teams, Logan, that would like to make their cases for that list, at least the winners yesterday. We can start with your darling baby boy, Baker Mayfield, the game-winning drive that he led for the Bucs beating the Texans. What was your biggest takeaway from that game?
Honestly, my biggest takeaway was about both of these defenses and then the Buccaneers' running game. I was super impressed the way the Bucs were able to consistently get yardage on the ground. If it was Bucky Irving, if it was Rachaad White, especially considering the circumstances of their offensive line. They were without left tackle Tristan Wirfs. They slide over Graham Barton to left tackle mid-game. Luke Gedeke, their starting right tackle, goes down. They have to move in Charlie Heck in. The Buccaneers are playing musical chairs on the offensive line, and normally that is a death sentence for an offense. We've seen all the turnover and how poor the Texans' offensive line has been and the effect it's had on them. They really haven't missed a beat, and I just want to give them a ton of credit for the cleverness of this offense and the nuance, but also just the big boys up front on the offensive line. They're dominating. I've been a little bit disappointed with Baker Mayfield. I will say that through 2 weeks, just in terms of consistency and his ability to move the ball through the air. But damn, is he clutch. I had the exact same feeling I had after week one, Carson. You give this guy... It's so ironic, man. Baker is one of the only quarterbacks I've ever watched that I feel like he wants to be in that situation. 2 minutes on the clock, down 6. That's when he is at his most dangerous. And his last 3 regular season games, man, I need to look back. I should have looked at this before the show. His last 3 regular season games have all been fourth quarter game-winning drives. Week 18 versus the Saints, boom, got him. Week 1 against Atlanta, boom, got him. Against Houston, I can't quantify it because he didn't have this gaudy statistical game. The Buccaneers didn't dominate offensively. But I don't know, man. He's just clutch. He's one of those guys that I want in those scenarios. And I had that sinking feeling for Houston after that last Chubb touchdown that they're going to get got here. But to me, it speaks about the strength of both of these teams. And you and I, Carson, we disagreed a little bit on our final Contenders episode about these two teams. And you hammered home. You were like, I really think this offensive line for the Texans is too bad for them to be a serious offense. And I think that has been proven throughout 2 weeks, man. I have really taken nothing home about C.J. Stroud negatively from these 2 weeks. You could look at his numbers and be disappointed, but it's like the guy is in a hellish situation. When I look at the other side of the field, for the Buccaneers, great offensive line, great coaching on the offensive side. They have a running game. They have a really nice screen game. They have a ton of talent in the receiving room, and they've got a complete defense. I just feel bad for C.J. Stroud, man, and I think the Texans' offensive line is going to hold this team back from being real-deal contenders. And the Bucs are just more complete, man. I think this really has said a lot about Houston through 2 weeks. These are really good teams that they're losing to. I respect Tampa Bay and I respect Los Angeles, but I think these first 2 weeks have told us a lot about this Houston offense.
It's been extremely ugly, man, and it's not surprising. This is the group that they walked into the season with, knowing that their offensive line was horrible, knowing that their run game was going to be horrible, knowing that the game plan was basically going to be preying on the C.J. Stroud-Nico Collins connection and continually putting them in tough spots. And as good as their defense is, that's just not enough. In fact, their defense and special teams did everything they could have to try to carry them to a win in this one. There was a 39-minute stretch where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were held scoreless, and then obviously you have the Texans blocking a punt to get into scoring position. You have them getting a long punt return to get into scoring position, and ultimately the offense was still just too limited to win them the game, even being given all those gifts. It's a disaster, man. And you look at the situations they have to live in. On early downs, they cannot run the ball whatsoever. So then you get to 3rd and long consistently. where they cannot protect CJ Stroud. He took multiple third down sacks in this game. If they actually can move the ball somewhat, and we see them in a red zone situation, which we have not seen much of at all through 2 weeks, you look at the spot where they find themselves on the goal line in this game, and they cannot run the ball. They cannot play power football to move forward 1 yard. And so now you put yourself in a situation where 3rd and goal on the goal line, 4th and goal on the goal line, and you feel like you're in a situation where you have to pass the football, but CJ can't get the ball to anybody other than Nico Collins. He doesn't have that chemistry. He doesn't have that trust. Frankly, there's not that much talent elsewhere. So he's just forcing the ball to Nico even when he's covered. It's a disaster. You have the 2-point conversion when he takes a sack. You can't even attempt a chance at actually getting the ball into the end zone. There's just so much that is so broken about this offense right now. Their running backs have 37 carries for 139 yards this season. Terrible. They are 4 of 18 on 3rd down through 2 games, Logan. Terrible. They are 0 of 3 in the red zone. They are dead last in points per drive. Like, this is not even close to a playoff offense. And this is exactly why I had Houston missing the playoffs before the year. I just think it's untenable. They have asked CJ to do so much for them for so long. But as we always say, if you're not getting better in the NFL, you're getting worse. And you can't consistently put this burden on one player in your offense. It's just a really bad formula.
It is, and I love the defense that Houston has compiled, too. That's what makes this so disappointing, man. You've got 2 ferocious edge rushers in Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson that are consistently getting in the backfield. You have got a great secondary with Stingley and Lassiter and those guys. Like, I don't get it, Carson, in terms of roster construction. I saw somebody bring this up online yesterday, comparing Andrew Luck and Joe Burrow and their situations just with how hellish it is and how bad their offensive lines were and how much those guys are getting beat up. I just don't understand it from a roster construction perspective, man, how you can invest in everything but the offensive line. You know, I know we're trench-pilled, I guess is how we could describe it. Like, you got to be strong in the trenches or you're not going to be a real football team. And I thought I was missing something. That's why I bet on the Texans, man. I was like, the offensive line can't be just the worst in football, right? One of these guys has to be good. Maybe Ursary is going to be the game changer in. No. Yeah. They're just going to be I think this is the worst O-line in football. And also, not only that, Carson, none of their running backs have like any pop, dude.
None.
Even when they're healthy, it's like, dude, they've got old Nick Chubb, they've got Joe Mixon. And I feel a lack of creativity on this offense, man. Yeah. And so it sucks, dude. The Texans just feel like such a mediocre team that maybe they can get to 7 wins. Maybe they can get to 8 wins. But I don't look at this team as a playoff contender. I don't think they're going to win the AFC South. Like, the offense is just such a significant hindrance to their success, man. They are incapable of putting up points on the board. It's really just as simple as that.
And they've always had some of these same limitations, right? Since CJ joined the team, the run game has been bad, the offensive line has been bad, and they've been able to scrape their way into the playoffs all the same, with CJ and Nico being as good as they are, with the defense being as good as it is. But still, like, if you do compare how this offense feels to 2023, CJ's rookie year, they were hitting on explosives then, and they had more dynamic playmakers in the sense that, like, Tank Dell was a big play threat and he had some really productive games. And obviously Nico had an exceptional year. Like, I talk about how reliant they are on the CJ Nico connection, and Nico hasn't even been productive. The guy's got 77 total yards through 2 games. So underwhelming to say the least, deeply concerning. We know that the AFC South is up for grabs, but they are just fighting such an uphill battle on offense. 14 points per game through 2. You're not winning big games like that.
C.J. Stroud still leads the NFL in pressure rate. He led the NFL in pressure rate last season, leads it again in this one. That's the biggest difference.
It's untenable. For the Bucs, I want to give them credit because even though neither of their first 2 wins have been pretty, this is what you do when you're down key guys. When you don't have Wirfs, when you don't have Godwin, when you lose Kancey and Gedeke mid-game in this one, you find a way, you grind out tough road wins versus good teams. Like, these are 2 50-50 games, and they both go Tampa Bay's way. And I think you have to give a ton of credit to Baker for that. I do agree. He does have this clutch gene. Like, they showed this stat on the broadcast. I believe he has the second most go-ahead touchdowns in the last minute of games since he joined the league in 2018 was what the stat was, which is definitely telling about the kind of big moment player that he is. Is there some inconsistency? Is there something of an erratic nature to the way he plays the game? Yes, but you find yourself in a 4th and 10, and he's the guy who finds a way to escape that pocket and make a play with his legs. And after that, I will say, I thought the execution for Tampa Bay's offense was on point. I thought it was seamless. I thought their protection was really good after that point. And Bucky Irving, man, just made so many plays throughout this entire game. But as a pass catcher on that final drive, his ability to get the ball in space, make plays, make people miss, he's great. Obviously, Emeka Egbuka has a quieter game in this one. He actually drops a pass, if you could call it that, on the 3rd and 10 before the Baker scramble where they had a shot at a big game. He was much quieter in this one, but he still has a touchdown. He was explosive in week 1. And Chris Godwin is coming back at some point. So I have still been very impressed by the screen game here and the short passing game and the run game in this one, even with Liam Cohen now gone, even without Tristan Wirfs, because like those are a couple of the pillars of this offense, and they're still able to execute well while shorthanded and while having lost this brilliant offensive mind. And shout out to Josh Grizzard, because I've been impressed with the job that he's done as a play caller. He was the 3rd down guru for Tampa last year, and everybody knows how I feel about Liam Cohen. He's filling some big shoes, and I think he's done a pretty nice job. But at the end of the day, like, Tampa Bay only puts up 20 points in this one. They did enough. I was impressed by the defense, though. I thought the defense played very well, and I think the defense has played very well a couple games into this season. Like, that's where they've impressed me more so than the offense, because I think at full strength, this offense is insanely stacked. I said the most stacked offense in football on paper. Again, they haven't had a couple of their best players for that formula, so it's different, but they've been excellent versus the run. They've gotten pressure. To be fair, now we're talking about them doing that against the Houston Texans, who are terrible at running the football and terrible at protecting C.J. Stroud. But what they did in week 1 against the Falcons, I mean, keeping that run game so in check when you look at what that run game has been over the last couple of years, what that run game was 1 week later, that's been impressive. So shout out to Todd Bowles, shout out to Tampa Bay defense. This is their 5th straight year starting 2-0. Underrated consistency from the fellas in Tampa.
Yeah, credit to Todd Bowles for the defense, man. I just think he's always got them. There's always extremely situationally aware. They're just really well coached. And on the run defense point, man, Vita Vea is just one of the best run defenders I think I've ever seen. Yeah. Man, that guy is a fucking mountain. Like, he just eats up interior offensive linemen. But the defense has been impressive. And when this offense gets back to full strength, not only Godwin, too, you're still missing Jalen McMillan. And I know McMillan's like the, 4th fiddle here or something with Egbuka, but he's a good receiver, too. Like, yeah. They've got a ton of different pieces, and it's hard to cover everybody. I agree, man. I really like what Grizzard's done. He's been the run game guy for the Bucs too. I think you can give him a ton of credit for the consistency there. And then I loved the schemes late. You know how they were running a bunch of deep vertical concepts like over the top with their receivers, but they would have one linebacker down, and then it's literally a one-on-one linebacker versus Bucky Irving with a ton of space. I'll take that proposition 10 times out of 10. Bucky Irving one-on-one with a guy, and if he makes a miss, it's basically a free 20 yards. Like, I love the play calling. So I think the Bucs are really good, man. I think they're going to be competing for I think they're going to be in the playoffs probably again. Atlanta's good, but it's just crazy to think that Tampa Bay is 2-0 with a patchwork offensive line and dealing with some of the injuries. Like, normally when you're dealing with some of these circumstances, you're going to drop one of these games. So really impressive stuff, man. Really resilient stuff from Tampa Bay through 2 weeks.
It is, and when they've got everybody on the field, I mean, they've got elite running back talent, legitimately. The totality of the backfield with Bucky, with Rachaad White, with Sean Tucker, who was very good last year, basically hasn't played at all this year. Elite receiving core. We already know what Godwin and Evans are as a duo at full strength, and now you've added another dynamic receiver there, and you mentioned you'll get Jalen McMillan, and Sterling Shepard has looked solid for them, and K. Doughton is a solid receiving tight end, and then you've got this elite offensive line, and then you've got this elite scheme, which I think they've maintained the identity of. And then it's like, yeah, Baker is up and down, but he's still pretty good, and you're putting him in an awesome situation. I think the Bucs are very good. I was in on them in the preseason, and It hasn't come easy, but the circumstances have not been easy for them whatsoever. They've done what they had to do. Let's talk about the other game, Logan. The Chargers took care of the Raiders. They start out 2-0 with a convincing win in division. What did you take away from this one?
Tell me if you disagree. I was really impressed with both teams in this game. Like, I know that Geno has some bad turnovers. I know that both of these teams struggled to put up some points at certain areas in this game, but I thought they both moved the ball well, and I thought both defenses had their moments. I do come away with this feeling like the Chargers are a bona fide Super Bowl contender, though, and not that they beat up on Vegas, but the side of the ball that they proved themselves on. Specifically, I was really impressed with the Chargers defense in this one, especially Dian Henley, man, who is really like just becoming a household name in the NFL. He's so versatile in terms of the run stopping. The guy is so fast, like he's just twitchy the way he gets off the snap and can get in the backfield. He's got multiple run plays where he gets in the backfield and is wrapping the guy's legs right after he gets the ball on the handoff. He's got a big interception in this game. In coverage, great break on that ball as well. Like, he's just got it all, man. I think he's got the brain and the awareness, but he's got crazy speed, and he's a really good tackler too. But that was the side of the football that I was most nervous about with the Chargers, right? I kind of feel like I know what I'm getting from Justin Herbert, although Herbert looks like a freaking MVP candidate through 2 weeks too. I think he's kind of making good on that take that you had a couple years ago about Herbert over Burrow, man. Not just on the injury stuff, but just in terms of what Herbert can do, man.
Yeah.
So, that touchdown that he's got early on in this game where he's got to dance and maneuver around in the pocket and find space. And this offense looks more dynamic, too. I don't want to sell short that fact either. Bringing Keenan Allen back, a year of continuity with these guys. Ladd McConkey, I think, is going to be a star in this league. I just really like a lot of what the Chargers have going on, man. Herbert, MVP, Harbaugh coaching, and I like a lot of what this defense has going on, too, man. I don't want to reveal it right now, but I do have the Chargers moved up a couple of spots in my power rankings, and I'm very high on them. We'll get to the Raiders. I'm not out on them. I thought this was a decent game from them in some aspects, but I'm very high on the Chargers, man. I think they're a bona fide contender.
So your opening statement I cannot agree with, but I was impressed by the Chargers, and by that I mean I was not impressed.
You're not
by
encouraged at all by this game by the Raiders?
I thought this was a rough game for the Raiders. I thought this was what a bad game looks like for them.
I thought they moved the ball pretty well. Like,
I don't know that I can agree with that. I mean, they ended up getting, 180 passing yards on 40-something attempts. They didn't run the ball well. They got chances because the Chargers' run game couldn't put the game away late. But no, I thought that this was a bad game for the Raiders. But also, I thought it was a really good game for the Chargers. And I do think that the Chargers are an extremely impressive team. Herbert does look like QB4 right now. He can just do things out there that Burrow cannot do. There is an element of elite arm talent with him. The ability to put such velocity, such zip on certain balls into tight windows. Like, he's just an incredible all-around quarterback talent. To have that sort of arm strength and that sort of accuracy and that size and mobility and pocket presence and processing. Like, this dude is a mega talent. It's all clicking for him right now. He looks like the absolute best of the best. And he's been the best quarterback in football through 2 weeks this season. Like, yeah, it's a super small sample size, but to put together back-to-back super impressive performances, and this maybe wasn't an A+ like week 1, but it's an A-. I mean, it's a really, really good game from Justin Herbert, and that makes all the difference for this team. The extent to which they have opened up the passing game is so good for them, and Herbert is playing at this immaculate level, man. I mean, the numbers for him through 2 games, 310 total yards per game of offense, over 9 yards per pass attempt, 128 passer rating. He's leading the NFL in passing EPA per dropback. Just extraordinary quarterback play.
Sorry, I wanted to jump in right here. We just got an update. I should have mentioned this with Tampa Bay. Kalijah Cansey is going to be out for the season. He tore his pectoral, so he's going to have season-ending surgery. I was really excited for him this year, man, and what he could do to build on last year. That is disappointing for Tampa Bay.
That is disappointing. They found a way without him in this one, but you do look at that defense, and the one thing that on paper you already thought was missing is like that premier
exactly.
pass rusher, and maybe Kancey was going to be the guy. Not a premier pass rusher, but could he be a double-digit sack guy for them? So that is unfortunate for Tampa. And by the way, if we're talking about losing pass rushers for the Chargers, Khalil Mack goes down in this game. He's already wearing a sling on the sideline, so we'll see what the update is for him, because as amazing as the Chargers defense is, that's kind of the one thing you would look at for them too. It's like, who's that real impact edge rusher? So unfortunate there. Injuries suck. Turn them off is what I say. But the Chargers offense is humming through the air. And Herbert has been outstanding, but he's also distributing the ball to a receiving core that I do like, and it's been very balanced. Like, I thought this might be a monster Ladd season, but right now, he's got the third most yards on the team, but him, Quentin Johnson, Keenan Allen, they all have 120-plus yards. Yes, I think Herbert unequivocally elevates these guys, but Keenan looks good back with the Chargers. Quentin Johnson is playing significantly better football than he was last year for them. The one thing I would definitely criticize with the Chargers offense in this game, they have to be able to run the ball better, especially because even though they're opening up the passing game, and you can't criticize Greg Roman and say he's doing the thing where he likes to run the football too much, because they're letting Herbert let it rip for the most part. But there is one sequence where they've got first and goal from like the 1.5-yard line, and it's 3 straight handoffs up the middle, and they get stuffed every time, and they have to settle for a field goal. Like, that's a spot where it's just, man, one of those times, 2 of those times, put the ball in Herbert's hand, probably go for it from 4th and 1, putting the ball in Herbert's hands, and they just didn't do that, and they couldn't get through. They couldn't get the push they needed in the run game. And then if you think about the late stretch of this game, like, when they were relying on Justin Herbert, they were seamless offensively. They were moving the football effortlessly. It's only when they got in that mode at the end of, okay, we just got to put this game away on the ground, eat up clock, that, like, they don't convert the 4th and 1 where there's kind of the fumbled handoff on the end around, but they're not even in that spot trying to just run the football up the middle because they're not confident in their conventional run game. Then they go 3 and out on the next series. Again, just trying to bleed clock running the football. Then they fumble on the next series. Again, just trying to sort of run out the clock, get 1 first down in that spot, and they couldn't do it. So that's the only concern to me, is that the Raiders did keep getting chances late in this one because the Chargers' run game was frankly inept, and Hampton is supposed to be the solve for that. He's supposed to be the dynamic running back talent. He did not play like that in this game. But overall, I think the Chargers look outstanding because the passing attack is phenomenal, and the defense I was so impressed by in this game.
Yeah, the biggest difference to me with the Chargers offense is what you touched on, though, just the explosivity. Like, this was a very limited offense in terms of their dynamism. They ball control football, win on the margins, win in short yardage situations, get to 3rd and short, manage football games. This is an offense that I could see going down
absolutely
double digits in a playoff game or something and maybe erasing it, right? And obviously, you don't want that scenario to arise. You want to dominate every game, but, like, that's just a point. Like, old Chargers team last year, I couldn't have seen that. This, I do look at difference. And the other side, the defensive point, you make another good one. It is the clutch stops in the red zone. That's the huge part. Anytime you can bend and not break like that is really encouraging. That is why I'm a little bit more positive about the Raiders, I think, than you, just because I was impressed by some of these long drives where they didn't end in touchdowns. And, like, obviously that's a double-edged sword. You didn't get a touchdown, so I need to hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. But they did have a couple of really long drives in this one. An 11-play drive in the second quarter, a 10-play one in the first. I really wanted them to score a touchdown on that first drive in the fourth. You have to get one there because that changes the geometry of that game, going from 20-6 to 20-13, making it a 1-score game.
For sure.
You just have to get a touchdown there. 19 plays, 62 yards. I thought they moved the ball really effectively. I thought Geno came up big. I just still like a lot of the infrastructure on offense for the Raiders. I know Geno has a disappointing game, the 2 interceptions that he has, and because I don't even count the third one. The third one is a moon ball towards the end of
it's one of the greatest arm punts I've ever seen. Pin them on the 1. 3rd and long, end of the second quarter, and he pins them on the 1. It was phenomenal technique.
That's why I didn't even count it. I was like, that's not even a pick. The 2 other ones are pretty bad. Geno just can't have those moments. Yeah. That is unfortunately a part of the Geno experience. But what you've gotten out of Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer, or Michael Mayer. I don't know. I like Michael
I
Mayer because
know.
it makes me think of the serial killer. I think it's way cooler.
And you love serial killers.
But I like a lot of what the Raiders, outside of the running game, that is the one area with Vegas that I've been really disappointed in. The fact that GT has not been able to get going at all, man. I don't know what they do about that. Like, that looks like, I don't want to be speaking prematurely just 2 weeks into the season, but that looks like it could be a wasted pick year one for Vegas in terms of his effectiveness. Like, and I don't mean that GT's not going to be any good or I'm selling all of my stock on that, but just behind this offensive line, you really wonder if it would have been more worthwhile investing in a different position group where, you know, it may be year 2 or year 3 before you really see the returns on that investment with him because the offensive line just isn't going to be good enough until then. So, I don't know. I don't think the Raiders are going to be stinky. I don't think they're going to be poop. I think that's a step up from last year.
No, man, look, let me be clear. I don't think the Raiders suck, but I also think that this was a bad game for them. Like, I've been something of a Raiders optimist, right? I had them winning 8 games, but an impressive 8 games, like, and with the potential to be a wild card team, because I really like this offense, and I just thought it was a bad performance by their offense. Like you mentioned, the 3 long drives, yeah, that's something. Outside of those 3 drives, though, they didn't move the ball whatsoever, and on all of those 3 drives, they still settled for field goals. So you put up 9 points in the game, it's tough for me to be like, yeah, that was a solid offensive performance no matter what. And Geno played a very bad game. I'm not worried about Geno, though. And it feels like everybody is kind of taking this opportunity to get their anti-Geno takes off, and that's fine. I'll hold on to my plushies. I've got 98% of the American
Guys, he
inventory.
threw for 360 yards and fucking carved New England last week.
Yeah, and it all just gets washed away in the last 3 years of quarterback play by him, which I think people already don't appreciate enough. That's fine. I think that this will correct itself over time, but he played a bad game in a primetime slot. Normally, I love his aggression. It's something I praise about him so much, right? His willingness to test pretty tight windows and make very accurate, big-time throws with the necessary zip on the ball, with really good ball placement. In this one, he just tested too many tight windows. That's why there were so many of these dangerous plays where there's a tip. I mean, that's where you get a couple of the interceptions, obviously. It was too many big risks from him. But I do think what I'm not seeing nearly enough discussion about is what that says about how awesome the Chargers defense is. Because if you look at a lot of these plays, there's nothing good there. Everything is tightly covered. And on top of that, the Chargers did a pretty good job of generating pressure in this game and maybe exposed some more issues with the Raiders' offensive line, which is a concern for me about this offense now through 2 games. And the Raiders couldn't run the ball on them. So, like, obviously, you can't have 3 interceptions, even though one of them doesn't matter whatsoever. But there were a couple more dangerous balls in this game. But, like, at some point, somebody does have to try to make something happen for this Raiders offense. That's not excusing the first pick, which was bad. That's not excusing the 3rd pick, which was also bad, even though 3rd and long, Geno's thinking, I've got to get a touchdown here. We're down 11 with only, a handful of minutes left on the clock. Nevertheless, I think you're better off just understanding, okay, live to see another down, take the field goal here. Now, even though it'll be an 8-point game, it's a 1-score game, and trust our defense, see what they can do, because they did get stops down the stretch of this game. Geno is not Mr. Dink and Dunk. He is not inclined to be overly patient, and sometimes he can be too aggressive, and that's where you can get some of the turnover numbers, especially if there's a lot of pressure on him and other things aren't happening within the offense. And I think that's where you get the couple of turnovers in this game. But even though it was a bad game from him, I know who Geno Smith is as a quarterback. What concerns me more from this game is the offensive line playing poorly. And the offensive line had some good moments in week 1, but they also still allowed 4 sacks to the Patriots, who look like a solid defensive front, but not one of the more ferocious pass rushes in football, probably. And then the run game. Genty has been extremely underwhelming. And not just as a runner of the football, which I think is obviously the first thing that you look at with this guy who they drafted 6th overall, who we talked about as one of the best running back prospects in recent memory. And the guy's got 30 attempts for 81 yards through 2 games. That's bad. It's also like in the receiving game, in the passing game in general, but he is a guy who you would hope against a defense like this that is so buttoned up, that keeps everything in front, that like is so tight in their coverage, maybe he's the release valve underneath and he can make some plays out in space. And instead it's like, props to the Chargers because their open field tackling is incredible, but Genti has 5 catches this year for 3 yards. He's averaging less than a yard per reception. Then in pass protection, he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing out there. Like, he's been bad. So Genti has just not been good whatsoever for them. That has to turn around. He needs to be way better. I do think that he'll be a good bit better. But when I look at this offense, everybody's talking about Geno after this game. I'm confident in Geno. I look at the offensive line and the running back play more so as the keys that are going to determine what level this Raiders team gets to. I still think they're going to be a good offense. I still think they're going to be a fine team, but you do see some of these limitations exposed against an actual elite football team, an actual elite defense. They didn't look like they really belonged on the same field all that much. I mean, they weren't close in this game.
I can't get there with Vegas.
You think that they
Not
were
belong,
close in this game?
I mean, maybe I'm just dwelling too much on that because I went to bed before this game ended. Maybe I'm dwelling too much on this last drive that they had, the 19-play march. But I was encouraged by it. I mean, I look at it as if they had gotten into the end zone, they would have had a chance at the end of this game to maybe force overtime.
But Logan, when the Chargers are up 20-6 in the fourth quarter, don't you think almost an ideal outcome for them is that you take up 11 minutes and run 19 plays and you only get 3 points out of that? Like, their whole goal on that drive is bend, don't break, right? Make them just dink and dime their way down the field, but we're not going to let them get 6 and we're going to make it take a shit ton of time, and that's what happened.
I don't know. I mean, I guess this just says the Chargers are contenders, the Raiders aren't. I mean, that's the simple conclusion. Like, the Raiders, I just don't think the Raiders are like, I don't think the Raiders are out. I just think they got beat by a really good team. I think the Raiders are going to look fine against other competition. I like that the Raiders aren't fucking bottom dwellers anymore. They have a purpose. They have life. They have Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll still gets me fired up a little bit. I like what the Raiders are cooking. I don't know, man. I like Geno too much, man. I hate saying negative things about the Raiders, dude.
You are talking to the
preeminent I know. I'm trying to buy some plushies. And you ironically have said, even though the stock is plummeting, I'm cornering the market. I'm buying more. And then when it booms back up, you're going to be the real winner.
I will say you're making a case right now as a true Geno Smith lover, who is the only kind of person I would consider selling one of the plushies to, which, by the way, they're all heavily used. But if I know that you have true intentions, I will sell them to you for $8,000 to $10,000 US dollars,
Steal,
depending on the day.
Steal.
That's one of my 18,000 that I'm willing to move off of.
$12,000.
14, and you've got a deal.
20. Deal.
Well done. That's fucking master negotiating right there, Logan. All that being said, even though I love Geno, I like the Raiders, I do think you have to be a realist about this game. And like, my whole cause for optimism with this Raiders offense was Geno has been working in such shitty circumstances in Seattle, and now he's got a clear situational upgrade. And in this game, it just didn't look like an upgrade. Receivers weren't getting separation. The offensive line was really struggling. The run game was bad. So I think that says a lot about the Chargers defense, no question. Again, I don't think that the Raiders are bad. I think the Raiders are fine. I think we could look up, and in 4 weeks, they could be sitting at 4-2, right? They've got the Commanders potentially without Jaden Daniels. They've got the Bears. They've got the Colts. They've got the Titans. There's a lot of winnable games there on this next stretch of the schedule. I think they're totally a competitive team, but this did expose some of the flaws that they do have in my eyes. So the Raiders, Logan, probably not going to be in our contender rankings, but let's get into that now. I want to clarify, first of all, we are doing these rankings with a long-term lens because last year we called them power rankings, and people get pissed about power rankings because that's supposed to just reflect whatever we've seen on this season, which to me, like, there's not that much point in that, right? Like, the Colts are going to be number 4 on my list because the Colts have played a great 2 games. Like, that's not actually how I view them long-term as a team. So there is projection here, absolutely. There is accounting for things like health, injuries. This is basically, when we think about getting to a playoff scenario, who do we think the 10 best teams in football are, and in what order? Obviously, you have to be able to get to the playoffs to be in that conversation, but that's the philosophy for the conversation. So, with that all being said, Logan, who's in your 10 spot?
So I have a concrete top 9. I've been debating who this last
agree.
team in my 10 spot is going to be for a
Same.
while. I have decided that my final 2 teams I was deciding between are the Commanders and the 49ers, and I'll flesh this out. I did pick the Commanders to go to the NFC title game and then go to the Super Bowl in my preseason predictions. The only reason they're not a lock for my 10 spot right now is just because of the Jaden Daniels injury. It's like if Jaden Daniels goes down, if he is going to miss a substantial amount of time, if he's going to miss any time at all, I just become worried about the formula. The Commanders' formula is Jaden Daniels. It is, we're going to run up a bunch of points on offense. He's going to lead us down every drive. We're going to be perfect, basically, offensively in boat ratio. I'm a little worried about his injury. Ironically, the other team battling for my 10 spot is also consistently injury-riddled. That is the San Francisco 49ers. I really like how the Niners have looked through 2 weeks. Unfortunately, they are perennially bit by the injury bug, and it bites them right on their ass. Brock Purdy's missing time. Jawan Jennings is battling an injury, even though he was back last week. George Kittle. They're just every year battling it. So right now, I am going to put the Washington Commanders in my 10 spot because of how I felt about them in the preseason, and I am going to view this through the lens of Jaden Daniels is going to be healthy down the road. I'll be clear about this too. If Jaden Daniels does not play against the Raiders next week, I'm going to take the Raiders in my game picks. I'll lay that out on the table. I just don't trust the Commanders without Jaden Daniels. So I'm glad you mentioned that. We are looking at this with the long-term lens. So I will leave the Commanders here in my 10 spot. And their formula is basically having one of the elite run games in the National Football League, continually getting into short yardage situations, executing flawlessly on 3rd and 4th downs, keeping drives alive, and scoring on basically every drive. With Jaden Daniels, I still really like that formula. You think back to their game against Green Bay, and I thought that said a lot more about the Green Bay Packers and how dominant they are as a football team than vice versa. The Commanders are some trash football team. I thought they got dominated in the trenches, sure. The Packers also dominated the Lions in the trenches in week 1. So I still think the Commanders are a legitimate playoff contender if Jaden Daniels can stay healthy. I think they're a team that can go in there and beat somebody. Their formula isn't super rock solid, though, because I don't believe in this defense a ton. I think they can get beat in the vertical passing attack the way other teams just don't. Mike Sanders still getting burnt over the top. If it's Marshawn Lattimore getting burnt all game by anybody, the Commanders just don't have a good secondary. And so I like their formula, but it is very rigid, and I worry against strong trench teams and strong vertical passing attacks. I feel like they could get dogged. So the Commanders are still here, but they have got to prove it to me as the season goes along, and I got to know if Jaden is going to stay healthy. So I want to move the Commanders up higher, but with the injury concerns, with what we've seen through 2 weeks, I can't have them any higher than this 10 spot.
It doesn't look like this is going to be a serious thing for Jaden. I mean, right now he's day-to-day. Obviously, he does play a risky brand of football when it comes to just how many hits he takes. He was able to stay totally upright and healthy last year, but
his style of play too on Thursday Night Football, it sucks, on a short week like that against a great defense.
Yeah, no question. But hopefully he misses a very short amount of time, if any at all. I considered the Commanders for this spot, even though I was Mr. Anti-Commanders in the preseason, especially compared to you, but I had them missing the playoffs. The thing that has been encouraging about their play to me through 2 games has been their defense up front. I think, first of all, they ate alive the Giants' offensive line and the Giants' offense in general, which is not so impressive. But then when you look at what they were able to bounce back and do in week 2 against the Cowboys, that looks better for Washington comparatively, knowing that it's not like the Giants are going to be inept against everybody offensively. I think that they've shown more of an ability to get pressure than I expected. They're pretty big up front. They've been better against the run than I expected. So we'll see. Ultimately, I still can't have them here because I'm not confident in this defense being better than average overall. I think that it's going to be a pretty mediocre group, but I do have some really big concerns about the secondary. And then offensively, I just can't see them taking a step forward from last year, even though Jaden is a year older, even though now they have Laramie Tunsil, even though now they have Debo, because I do think teams have done a very nice job of adjusting, understanding what Washington wants to do offensively, and ultimately just making life harder on them, right? Making Jaden Seymour zone, doing a better job of countering the screen game, doing more to just make him beat you as a pure drop back passer. And as good as the guy is, that's not his greatest strength. So I am going to just leave Washington off. But like you said, dude, there's 9 teams that I feel are really good. And then there's a 10th. And I considered a lot for the 10 spot. I considered the Niners. Ultimately, haven't seen enough from them. Like, it's nice to start the year 2-0. I think that defense looks better under Saleh than it did last year. At the same time, they've faced subpar competition so far. We'll see who the Seahawks end up being. I'm not super high on them. The Saints, we think, are going to be one of the worst teams in football, and they've kind of eked out both of those games. And just like with the injuries with them, I never know who I can bank on actually being healthy. They make a case because I do think that offense at full strength, there's some pop there for sure. I mean, with the emergence of Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall and the brilliance of Shanahan's scheme. And I think that defense is having something of a bounce back. I just can't quite get them here yet. Consider the Broncos. They weren't on my list preseason. I don't think that they've done anything to get on the list, but they do have a formula of just elite defense, good offensive scheme, good offensive line that gives them something of a floor. Ultimately, the team that maybe made the most compelling case to me compared to the preseason was the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think we've seen quite enough from them yet, but I have been impressed by that defense. I have been impressed by the improvement of that pass rush. I need to see more of it against opponents other than J.J. McCarthy behind a Vikings offensive line that's missing their best player. But that's encouraging, and I do like the level that Penix has been at. They have the offensive talent. They have playmakers. They're good in the trenches. So there's stuff to like with Atlanta for sure. I considered my darling Jags. Ultimately, I need to see their premier offensive guys be more consistent. That's Trevor Lawrence. That's Brian Thomas Jr. That's Travis Hunter. But I do love the scheme. I've been encouraged by their ability to move the ball, but I need to see it a little more consistently to have them in my top 10. And obviously they blew this game this past week, which they really should have won. So ultimately, Logan, maybe this is controversial. Maybe this is crazy. I have not taken out or put in a single new team from my preseason top 10 contender rankings.
Minnesota!
I have the Minnesota Vikings at number 10. I just think they're still more talented than all the alternatives. I think this defense is absolutely elite. I think the front 7 is ridiculous. I think Brian Flores is as good as it gets when it comes to defensive play calling. I just think they do so much to make opposing quarterbacks and offenses uncomfortable. And then I look at the offensive pieces, and we already know that KOC is an elite play caller. We already know that Jettis is, to me, the best receiver on the planet. This is a team that had success running the football last year, weren't the most efficient, but they were able to establish that identity, set up the play action, establish the run on early downs. Jordan Addison is coming back week 4. Christian Darrisaw is coming back seemingly very soon. He was practicing this week. And here's really the bold take of it all, Logan. J.J. McCarthy's out 2 to 4 weeks now with this ankle injury. I think Carson Wentz can win the job in that time. And that makes me feel better about their chances. I think this team, with a veteran quarterback, flawed as he may be, who does not look so completely overwhelmed against NFL defenses, who has better arm talent, right, is able to make some more of these NFL throws, and maybe just more importantly than anything else, has the experience, has shown an ability to capably execute NFL schemes with a great play caller, with what should be a good offensive line with Darrisaw out there, with really good weapons in the passing game, with an identity of running the football. Like, I just think the vet actually gives you a really good shot to win a lot of games when the defense is also that elite. He's not going to play at the level Sam Darnold did last year, but I'm not expecting them to win 14 games. And their roster is better than last year. They just need passable, capable quarterback play to justify the 10 spot because the roster is that good. And I can get there with Carson Wentz. I can't get there with J.J. McCarthy. I can get there with Wentz. Do you think I'm crazy?
This is a respectable, honorable, and ethical take. I love it. It's also really bold. I'll just say this. if Kevin O'Connell does the Sam Darnold turnaround shtick, Josh Dobbs thing with Carson Wentz, build the fucking statue, man. Like,
Yeah.
Kevin O'Connell is the GOAT if he does this with Wentz, man.
He is the GOAT. He absolutely is the GOAT. But I just think there's so much in this offense that really should work at a high level.
It's not ridiculous because I do think there's credence to the idea that you're talking about right now of just having a guy that has played NFL football for a long time. Like, this guy has played on 6 teams in 6 years. I don't think it's a ridiculous take to say this. And I don't think we should fully punt on McCarthy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not encouraged at all through 2 weeks that this guy is going to be a starter in this league. I didn't think he was a starter when he got drafted. I liked Penix more. I liked basically every other quarterback that went in that first round more than McCarthy. But experience is a really valuable thing at the quarterback position, and you see it with Daniel Jones. You see it with Sam Darnold. It's not – you see it with Baker Mayfield. You see it with Geno Smith. Like, there are guys that – and obviously, those guys are all better than Carson Wentz, right?
Yeah.
But the point still remains the same. You find a smart offensive mind with a veteran quarterback that knows how to prepare, how to get ready for games, what he's looking at defensively, and he can manage. And lest we forget, I get it. Nobody likes Carson Wentz. I'm not going to tell you to go and like Carson Wentz. Basically, all of his teammates say this guy is a bad leader, and I think that is a stain on him as a football player and the reason that he has bounced around locker room to locker room over the course of his career. That being said, this guy was basically a couple of plays away from taking the Colts to the playoffs a few years ago and maybe getting a long-term gig there. Like, you can still win games with this guy at quarterback if the infrastructure is right. And like you said, Sam Darnold won 14, man. What's stopping Wentz from winning, 9 to 10 with this team? I wouldn't count it out. I'm not going to make the take because I'm not going to bet on Carson Wentz, but it's bold, and I like it.
See, I feel like I'm not even betting on Carson Wentz. I'm just betting on him compared to J.J. McCarthy being the worst quarterback in football for 7 of 8 quarters.
It's still one of the most talented teams in football, man.
You look at what the defense has done, playing their asses off, and, if you got below average quarterback play, they'd be 2-0 because they held Atlanta to 15 points into the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. And it's just 3 and out. JJ taking bad sack after bad sack. JJ can't make the throws that he needs to make. His pocket presence is so shaky. His pocket feel is so shaky. I'll take Carson Wentz over that by, honestly, a decent amount at this point. And that's not to say anything concrete about what JJ McCarthy can be. That's to say this is a team that just needs a capable vet, right? I couldn't believe I was saying it, but I wish that they had brought back Daniel Jones on a 1-year, $14 million deal like the one that he got with the Colts. Just somebody who can operate this offense. You get that guy in there, and I think that they can be a very good football team because they are that talented and that well coached on both sides of the ball. So this is where we differ, certainly, from power rankings. The Minnesota Vikings have not played like a top 10 team through 2 games, but I think that's because they had a major red flag limiter at quarterback. And I think in his absence, that actually is going to end up being a blessing in disguise for them. I know they believe in JJ. Maybe they won't give Wentz the shot. Maybe even if they go 2-0 under Wentz, they say this is JJ's team and we're putting him back under center. But I just think you have to go with the guy who gives you the best shot to win now. And that's not to say that it's over for JJ. But if he's not the guy who gives you the shot this year, well, this year matters. You're coming off a 14-win season. You are in every way in win-now mode, and you hope that you can do that with a quarterback on a rookie contract. But if you can't, then you got to accept that and give yourself the best chance to make the playoffs and make a little noise. But there is a tier gap here because, like I said, there were 6 teams who I considered all very closely for the 10 spot. In the number 9 spot, though, Logan, we have some improvement. Who do you have?
We do have some improvement. I'm not going to spend too long on this one because we've already talked about them this episode. I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here in my 9 spot, and I just think they're a complete football team. Can run the ball really effectively between the tackles, and they've protected for Baker and really established the running game on a patchwork offensive line that is down both of their starting tackles. You got Graham Barton moving all over the line. You've got injuries in the receiving core, and then the defenses look stout, man. I thought we may be due for some regression with some of the aging on this defense. Like, I cannot believe Levante David is still playing amazing football, man. That guy's still really effective. The secondary looks solid. The run defense looks good. the Bucs are just a complete football team, and being a complete football team is enough to get you on this list and for me to consider you as a real deal contender. That being said, I think there is potential for the Bucs to climb a little bit higher on this list. I think it would be hard for them to crack my top 7 just with some of the high-end quarterback play and some of the loaded rosters that are above them. But if Baker in this offensive passing attack really get going, that changes the dynamic for this Tampa Bay offense, where I look at them as a top 10 well-coached defense with not only a solid offense, but an explosive offense. So the Bucs, I think, are stamped in my top 10 for right now, but I think there's a little bit room for them to climb higher if we really see this passing attack get going.
I have Tampa Bay one spot higher. I was higher on them in the preseason. I believe that I actually moved them from number 7 preseason to number 8 right now, but I feel very similarly about them. I do think it's impressive that they're at 2-0 right now, considering the circumstances, and I think at full strength, this offense can just hum in a really special way. I mean, the firepower they have through the air with the playmakers there, the pass protection, the punch that they have on the ground, the screen game that they have. Like, this is a team that can put up 30 points per game on you. They did it last year. They were one of the most efficient and effective rushing and passing attacks, and I think all that potential is here again this year. I mean, they added another dynamic playmaker in Ibuka. Like, get fully healthy, get Wirfs back, get Godwin back, and that potential is all there. Defensively, I've been impressed. They've overachieved my expectations through 2 games. I do still think they're just solid on that side of the ball. I do wonder about that lack of a high-impact edge rusher. I do think that the secondary is just okay, but they're well-coached, and you do know that they're at least going to be solid defensively. So with the sort of offensive punch and upside they do have, and a defense that I've liked through a couple games, I have them in my 8th spot. In my number 9 spot, I have the Detroit Lions, who I've dropped a couple spots from preseason, but ultimately I feel very similarly about. It's more so a couple other teams passing them up than it is me getting lower on the Lions. In fact, I was like the ultimate nothing matters guy after the Lions week 1 loss to the Packers. I didn't think that was an indictment on the Lions. I thought that said way more about how awesome the Packers were. And I think that a lot of people now have moved to that side after week 2. So Detroit's had one bad week. They've had one great week, but they have still shown clearly they have the ability to hang 52 on a mediocre football team like Chicago. They have the offensive punch. They have major big-time playmakers in this offense. They have Jared Goff, who, when you protect him, is one of the better pocket passers in football. They still are good as an offensive line, even if they're not at the peak of their powers like they were when they had Ragnow and Zeitler over these last couple years. Defensively, they have talent as well. The reasons that I have dropped them, just a couple spots, I do think that there is a coaching difference here, losing Ben Johnson, losing Aaron Glenn. And I kind of want to see what this defense can do. How much was last year Aaron Glenn scheming the shit out of things and making the most out of that group? Like, are they going to be a top 10 unit on that side of the ball? I can see it at full strength. They have talent up front. They have talent in the linebacking core. They have talent in the secondary. They have talent everywhere. And then offensively, how do they look against the best of the best? Teams that they're not just physically dominating up front anymore, who can keep the run game a bit more in check, who can get some more pressure on Goff, put him in more difficult positions. That's just where when I hold them up to the best of the best, like compared to Tampa Bay, I think I slightly prefer the Bucs offense. And I also have been more impressed with the Bucs defense so far, but I also think the Lions have the potential to be better on both sides of the ball, really depending on if their coaching can max out what they have. So ultimately, I've been more impressed by everybody I have above Detroit, except for one team that I just kind of have the ultimate faith in. But I do view them in this tier of very good football teams.
I do too. I have the Lions one spot higher at 8, so we flop on the Bucs. The Kalijah Kancey injury is important to me when we're talking about long-term prospects with Tampa Bay versus Detroit. They are very similar to me, but I do just have a level of faith in Detroit figuring it out. I'm glad they had this bounce-back game against Chicago because I think it reinforces that, like you said, dude, against shitty teams, against teams that aren't strong in the trenches, Detroit can still dog you. They've got a ton of talent still. I liked seeing Amon-Ra and Jamison Williams get involved on some explosive plays. And then defensively, Green Bay was disappointing. Don't get me wrong. I think Brian Branch is still a defensive player of the year kind of guy. I still love Kirby Joseph. I like the linebacking core. I'm just waiting to see if Aiden Hutchinson and this defensive front can get pressure the way they did last season when he was at full strength. That's kind of my question mark. Like you said, about the offense, I have the exact same question. How do they look against top-notch defenses like Green Bay? Because beating up on Chicago is one thing. Getting points against a great defense is another. And then are they going to be able to get pressure the way they did last season? But I think Detroit's really solid, and I think they can also climb higher on this list. I think this is about the low point for me with Detroit, this 8 or 9 spot. I don't know if I could go lower than this for them.
I think that they have too much talent to be any lower. That being said, there are enough concerns to keep them out of like my top 5, top 6 range, but I defended Detroit a lot after week 1. I feel like my preseason expectations for them were very reasonable based on what we've seen so far, and so ultimately they haven't moved much on my list. We flip the Bucs and the Lions in our 8 and 9 spots. Who do you have at number 7, Logan?
I think you were hinting at this earlier. I have the Chiefs here in my 7 spot. Carson, we said it all last year. You said it earlier on this show. This is not power rankings. If this was straight up power rankings, the Colts would be in the top 10 and the Chiefs obviously would not be. We're not strictly doing that. I think that's kind of boring, like ranking who's been like. I feel like that's a lot more easily measurable, right?
Yeah.
With like just
Let's
outcomes
go look at
and
EPA.
stuff like that.
Let's go look at DVOA, and these are your top 10 so far.
Exactly. The reason the Chiefs aren't higher, though, because if the Chiefs were 7 or lower in any of the past 7 seasons, people would be blowing gaskets and their heads would be exploding. The Chiefs are at number 7 because they have Patrick Mahomes. I think they have lost 2 games against 2 really good football teams, so I don't come away from either of those games going the Chiefs aren't real deal contenders. That being said, I have been disappointed. I've been disappointed with the offensive play calling. They can't run the freaking ball. Just put the ball in Pat's hands more, guys. You and I have been saying this for 2 years, Carson, even when they've still been wildly successful. Let's put the ball in one of the best quarterbacks in the game hands more. This is the year where I think they're going to be forced to do it. I've been disappointed in the receiving game. Their 2 top guys are out. Hopefully when they get back, they'll look a lot better, right? And then defensively, I think I've been disappointed on that side of the ball as well, but I'm not going to take away a ton from Philadelphia spamming the tush-push and dominating in the trenches, right? So I think they've lost 2 games against 2 really good football teams. They still have Patrick Mahomes. Ultimately, it's the Chiefs. It's like, with all their flaws, they still have things that I feel like I can bank on. And if you feel like we're broken records with this, I'm sorry, but my stance isn't changing. With a team, with Mahomes, with Andy Reid, with Spags, with Chris Jones, with Trent McDuffie on the backside, the Chiefs have not looked good through 2 weeks. I'm not ignoring that fact, but Patrick Mahomes has earned this level of respect, and I'm not going to bail on a team that's been this successful in the Mahomes era. So I feel like this, ironically, is the low spot for the Chiefs. I couldn't go any lower with this team, and I feel like they can only climb higher on this list as the season goes along.
I had the Chiefs at number 5 preseason. I thought I was probably going to keep them in that same spot. I'm actually moving them 1 spot down just because I have been so impressed by another team, but I still have the Chiefs at number 6. I understand they're 0-2. They've played 2 very close games against 2 of my, spoiler, top 5 teams, 2 elite football teams, and they've done that while missing their top 2 receivers. Like, that to me is just the most significant thing. I don't disagree with the issues that you laid out. I mean, the run game is anemic. It's frankly inept. Like, when it just comes to handing the ball off to the running backs, they're really, really bad. And this offense isn't as creative as it was a few years ago, and certainly isn't as dynamic. That goes without saying. That's been the case the last couple years, too. But I do think when you get Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy out there, the guy who is your number 1 receiver, your possession guy, your most consistent playmaker, and then the guy who is your dynamic speed guy, take the top off of defense, give us a chunk play here and there guy. They're supposed to be the 2 most impactful receivers in your offense overall. Like, it just makes such a difference, man. Because right now, it's pretty obvious that the Chiefs are playing the worst wide receiving core in football. And at full strength, I actually think this is the best receiving core that they've had in a few years. Like, I think that Rashee Rice is really good. I think that Worthy was really making plays down the stretch last season and is poised for something of a year two breakout. And then the other concern you would have flagged with the offense is the offensive line, right? They struggled last year, all the turnover there. I think they've protected pretty well. Patrick Mahomes, in terms of pressure rate, is one of the 5 least pressured quarterbacks in football through 2 weeks. So I think a lot of these issues come down to them being more reliant on the run game right now than they should be and will be when they have a fully healthy offense with those playmakers back out there in the passing game. And then defensively, we know that last year they took a step back from 2023. I thought that this could be a pretty average defense. That's how they looked in week 1. In week 2, I thought they looked pretty good, though. Now, to be fair, there's clearly some issues with the Eagles' offense and their passing attack that we do need to work out, but they really, really kept that group totally under control for a vast majority of that game. It was a great game plan by Spags, and I do feel like he's kind of the ultimate big game coordinator. So it's not going to come easy for the Chiefs. They're not going to breeze past people. Again, they haven't been doing that even in the last couple years, but they don't have an elite defense like they did in 2023. Nobody's sitting here and saying they're going to go to the Super Bowl. But I also think if you sit here and say they're not going to the playoffs, and if they get to the playoffs, they're not a major threat to win a game, like, I just can't agree with that. I still think they have some of the components for that key formula with Patrick Mahomes, with Spags, with Chris Jones, with McDuffie, with a fully healthy receiving core that I believe in more. I can't drop them lower than this. There's just too many components that I do still trust there. So they're in my 6th spot. In my 7th spot, I have the Rams. This is similar to where I had them preseason. I really haven't moved much around, Logan. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm trying to not do too much overreacting to a couple weeks of football. And I also feel like a lot of stuff has mostly aligned with my preseason expectations. The Rams look really good. And they basically checked a couple key boxes that we've talked about with them. They've got an elite pass rush. That was clearly the case down the stretch of last year. That's been the case again this year. They're 7th in pressure rate right now. Really awesome young group up front there. Offensively, elite quarterback play. Puka and Devontae looking great. This was a Devontae breakout in week 2. It's one of the best receiving duos in football. I think there's potential with the run game. I think the play calling is excellent. And if you give me this sort of complete offense, especially with an awesome quarterback, and you give me a really awesome pass rush in a defense that overall just improved so much down the stretch of last year and has looked really good early in this year, the Rams look like one of the best two-way teams in football. That's the reality of it. And I think I had them, I don't remember exactly where I had them, maybe one spot lower than this preseason. And their defense has looked even better, I would say slightly, than I would have expected, so I moved them one spot up.
Yeah, I've got the Rams in my 5 spot. They, I feel like, have had the most positive improvement from my preseason. You said it, dude. They look like one of the best two-way teams in football. That's why they're here for me. I look at the best strengths of this team. The elite pass rush, elite quarterback play. I think the running game is going to be better this season with a more solid offensive line without them having to move so many different guys around. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum can both run it. Like, I was really impressed with Corum in this last game. And then you look at the receiving talent, and oh my gosh, dude, Davante Adams looks kind of spry, man. You give him some one-on-one coverage with Matthew Stafford.
Dude, Davante is still sick.
He is.
Davante last year, playing in the offenses he played
balled
in,
out
put
with
up
Rodgers.
1,100 yards in 14
He had
games.
a really productive run with Rodgers there. Like, Davante, to me, still has got it, is still a number 1 in this league, and obviously he's a number 2 to Puka, right? But I'm just saying in terms of talent and ability, can produce like one. Puka is a home run hitter. Like, and I like a lot of the young talent on the back end of this Rams defense, too. Like, I need to see it against some higher-end competition, right? I don't think these are 2 world beaters that they beat in these first 2 weeks, but they check a ton of boxes for me, man. I really like the defense, the pass rush, the coaching staff. I'm all in, man. I'm really high on the Rams, and I think they're a top 3 team in the NFC to me. I don't think that's a blistering hot take, but I do have them in my 5 spot, man. I like what the Rams are cooking up through 2 weeks.
The pass defense overall has been so awesome, and we knew about the pass rush. They've just maintained that, but I have been impressed by the secondary play too. So there's absolutely the potential for the Rams to jump into my top 5. Ultimately, I do feel like all my top 5 teams are so stellar though, And so I'll just jump into the team who I have in my number 5 spot. It feels like you're debating at this point which of the 2 LA teams are you more impressed with, and I actually think they have a lot of similarities in terms of coaches you really like, defenses you really like, quarterbacks you really like, some of those key components for winning big games that make you scary, make you a threat to beat anybody. If you can get stops and you have a quarterback who can lead a comeback or who can put up 35 on the opposition, lead a big time drive, like that makes you a big time playoff threat. Both teams have that. I do think the Chargers are the slightly better version of it though. I do prefer their defense in totality, and I do prefer their quarterback and probably their offense slightly overall. It's very close. The one bummer with LA for me is the fact that Slater got hurt. We've talked about it a million times. I said preseason, they would be a Super Bowl contender to me if they had Slater, but they don't. And so still had them in my top 10 contenders, but not in my top 5. I just think they'd be a powerhouse with him, but they're still awesome, even in his absence. I mean, Justin Herbert is just ridiculous. We talked about it. The passing attack looks amazing. They're opening it up more. There's more receiving talent, and Herbert, through a couple games, playing the best of any quarterback in football. I would like to see them run the ball better. I think they have the potential to do so. I think Hampton has to bounce back. I think to some extent, at least, he will bounce back. Maybe that's something of a limitation for this offense, the run game, but I still think they're going to be very, very good with what they're doing through the air. And the defense is just so wildly impressive to me. Like, they feel impossible to get a big play against right now. They are so damn buttoned up. They are so good at keeping everything in front. Their DBs are all over everything, man. I mean, their ability to break on routes, jump balls, like just be all over you is so impressive. I mentioned this, but their open field tackling is ridiculous, dude. Just the technique, the discipline, the execution of this defense. Jesse Minter did an unbelievable job last year, but my one concern with them is like, without what I viewed as elite defensive talent, can you replicate a number 1 scoring defense? Or did you like just fully max out and now maybe we see a little bit of regression just because you can't really get better from where you were at, and now the league has seen your scheme, and yet somehow I've been more impressed by this defense through 2 games than I was last year. So like that's what's moved me with this team. Feels like a couple of the key categories, their defense being as great as last year and them just weaponizing the weapon that Herbert is more. That's really all it took for this to be a top 5 kind of team, and I'm there with them. The Mac injury is unfortunate. Hopefully he's okay. Hopefully he's back soon because they could use that impact pass rusher. But I think the Chargers are a really impressive football team right now.
They are too. To me, that's why I have them in my 6th spot. But the reason I went with the Rams over them, I agree with you on Herbert. I prefer Herbert to Stafford marginally at this point, but Herbert's playing MVP level football through a couple of weeks. The reason I went with the Rams, I prefer their rushing attack to the Chargers, and then I also prefer their defensive front. I just think it's easier for the Rams to get pressure home than it is the Chargers. But these teams are both really impressive and both really close to me. I consider them both to be real deal contenders.
I see where you're coming from. The Chargers have the better overall defense. I mean, they've both been really, really good so far, but that's what I would say. But when it comes to big games, disruption is so valuable, and that's what an elite pass rush gets you. That's what the Rams do have that the Chargers don't. That being said, I've seen a Chargers defense that maybe doesn't epitomize disruption, but they're just getting stops. I mean, you just can't move the ball on them right now, and that's facing 2 offenses that are flawed, but I believe are good. That's facing 2 really good quarterbacks. I mean, we can disagree on Geno Smith. I don't know that we can disagree on Patrick Mahomes, people. And obviously, the Chiefs were still able to put up 21 points, but like the Chargers played a very good defensive game in that one and an even better defensive game on Monday Night Football. Now we move in to the top 4. We're going to have the same 4 teams. They're the same 4 teams that we had in the preseason, except not for you, excuse me. For me, it's the same 4 teams. There's one team that has climbed into your top 4. I'm very happy to see it. But who's in your 4 spot, Logan?
I've got the Eagles here in my 4 spot. I don't have anything negative really to say about the Eagles outside of the fact that their passing attack has been so lackluster at this point. Not a ton of stuff vertical. Basically every throw is underneath. Jalen Hurts' passing numbers are anemic right now. I'm not going to clown on the Eagles or their passing attack for struggling. Like it's clearly not a hindrance to them winning games. Like this defense is still damn good. I think their coverage has been really good. They've been able to get pressure and stop the run. They've been able to run the ball really well. But when I look at them against the top 3 teams on my list, it's clearly the weakest passing attack. And I think that if you have a couple of busted coverages in a playoff game or something like that, and you need to put up points in bunches, I don't feel that way about this Eagles team. Last year, I could see that, with Philadelphia, where you get behind and Hurts needs to throw you back into a game and you need some pop. And let me be clear about something. I'm not saying the Eagles can't do it later in this year. I just haven't seen it yet, and that's why I'm going to have them at 4. Like you said it, dude. Like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith just haven't put up numbers through 2 weeks. Obviously, they're a super talented wide receiving core. It can happen. I just haven't seen it with these, this new offensive situation for Philadelphia. So that's the only reason they're down here at 4. I still respect this team in the trenches. I still know what Saquon Barkley can do, what this defense can do, but I just need to see it with the vertical passing attack before I'm ready to move them up between really any of these teams. They are maybe the weakest just passing attack period in my top 10.
Yeah, no question. At this point, I mean, it's been brutal. They're 31st in passing yards per game, 119. Jalen Hurts ranks 31st in intended air yards per attempt. Everything is shallow.
Who's 32? Just for my
scrimmage.
Curiosity.
I'm actually not sure, but
let me look that
I
up.
believe that's out of 34 qualified quarterbacks too. So 31st out of 34. Devontae's at 34 yards per game. AJ's at 17 yards per game. They've hit on 2 actual downfield passes all season. Like, it's really disappointing. We've seen them obviously have major issues with the passing attack before. I don't know that it's ever been this ugly, and it's also all the sample that we have this season now with a new play caller. Feels like they miss Kellen more because I have not liked the play calling. I have not liked the route concepts. And if guys aren't, like, breaking very open, Jalen Hurts is, to me, not a high-level processor. He's not somebody who necessarily is going to capitalize quickly on a slight opening, and he's also not somebody who's going to make tight window throws. And so what you have is kind of over and over again, he holds the ball, he goes to a check down, or he tries to make a play with his legs, and it's just this process of, like, can we nickel and dime you? Can we pick up 3 to 4 yards per play and just kind of work our way downfield?
I know that Eagles fans may get mad when we're like nitpicking this because their response would be, oh, well, we've won 2 games. What else can the guy do? But the point being is that you're not always going to have that game script. And if you have any breaks on the back end where it becomes a shootout where you need to put points up, I just don't trust this team to move the ball quickly, explosively, to churn points out like that. Like, this Eagles team feels like they have to win a very, again, I said it with like the Commanders, but a very rigid formula. You got to keep games low scoring. You got to dominate time of possession, and you have just got to grind out these football games.
That being said, they do have the potential to break out of this because of the talent that they have in this offense. We saw them start slow last year. Not like this, but we saw some of those slumps in the passing attack. But it is a really bad start offensively. Still, it may be ugly, but like you said, they're 2-0. Got a quality road win over the Chiefs, even if they're down a couple of weapons. And I'm actually not moving the Eagles any lower than I had them in the preseason. So I had them 4 because I was concerned about the passing attack. I didn't think it would look like this, but that was a flag for me. And I do think the defense is very good, but it's not quite last year's, right? They have lost some talent on that side of the ball. Thought they played quite well against the Chiefs, but I also thought, well, there were a few busted coverages in that game. Like, the Tyquan Thornton stuff was kind of ridiculous. 3 times he's just running wide open downfield. Could have all been touchdowns. One of them was. And so that's where, like, last year they were so exceptional defensively. That's the biggest reason that they were the team that they were. I'm going to knock them a little bit and just ultimately trust the teams that I do think are way more dynamic offensively while acknowledging the Eagles are a very good defense. They're dominant in the trenches on both sides of the ball. They've got a lot of offensive skill position talent. They're just not tapping into any of it right now, and maybe that doesn't get better, but maybe it does. Who's in your 3 spot, Logan?
I've got the Buffalo Bills here in my 3 spot, and I know this may seem counterintuitive considering the fact that the Ravens lost week 1 versus the Bills 41-40, but I just couldn't do the mental gymnastics to put Buffalo above Baltimore. And I want to be clear about something. I took Buffalo to the Super Bowl in the preseason. I picked them to win it. And if we get a Ravens-Bills matchup in the playoffs, I still may go with Buffalo because of my faith in Josh Allen being the best quarterback on the planet. But that's the reason they won week 1. There's no other reason. And when I think about the ease of which these teams win games, obviously the Bills drubbed the Jets like a drum last week. They took care of business. Baltimore moved the ball effortlessly on the ground against Buffalo. And I just see them having such an easy recipe for success no matter who they play because of how elite all of the talent is on this roster. So, again, I'm having to jump through some hoops because Buffalo beat them, but it's Josh Allen. Like, that's why they won. I look at these rosters top to bottom, and I just don't think Buffalo's defense is nearly as good as Baltimore's is.
Yeah.
And that's the difference to me. Like, I just think Baltimore is going to steamroll teams the way they always do in the regular season. They're going to mow them down, and I feel like Buffalo just has more red flags if it is the secondary, if it is stopping the run. And that's a nightmare scenario, trying to stop Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, right? But that's what they're going to have to do if they're going to win again in the playoffs, and I just think Baltimore has an easier formula, and they're just the more talented roster. So they lose to Buffalo head-to-head. I may pick Buffalo to beat them again later in this season, but I think the Ravens have the easier formula, and for that, I've got them above Buffalo, and the Bills are in my 3 spot.
I have Buffalo at number 3 as well. You basically laid it out there. It just comes down to seeing an elite defensive level, or at least certainly elite defensive potential from the top 2 teams, who I also view as great offenses. And even though Buffalo makes a very good case for being the best offense of them all and the best offense in football, I just have more questions and concerns about the defense. That's not to say that this isn't very close, just like it was in the preseason, but I do ultimately land on favoring the two-way balance that those 2 teams above them do have. That being said, the offense is a machine, averaging 35.5 points per game. They're second in passing yards. They're second in rushing yards. They have 0 turnovers. 24 straight games. They've won the turnover battle, Logan. We know what we're getting from Josh Allen. I do think he's the best quarterback on the planet. We know how good this offensive line is. We know how good James Cook is in this run game. I like what we've seen from Keon Coleman and Josh Palmer, who are a couple of key guys you'd look at to step up in the receiver room. Palmer being brought over, Keon looking for maybe a year 2 breakout. He was incredible in that 4th quarter in week 1. Palmer, I just like his ability to separate, get open, and Keon is just such an athlete that sometimes he can really impose himself and make some big plays. So offense gets an A++ in terms of what I believe they can do. Defensively, that's where we'll see. If you do look at that game against Baltimore, for 3 quarters, they were helpless. And they got a couple big stops, and shout out to the GOAT, Ed Oliver, for his performance in that game. But you do have to worry about their ability to stop the run consistently, because that's been a question mark in recent years. You do really have to worry about that safety spot. That's going to remain a concern for me. And ultimately, these top 2 teams, they just have more elite defensive talents. They have more big-time playmakers on that side of the ball. But the most encouraging thing for Buffalo, maybe through the first couple games, I mean, obviously just Josh having that God-tier performance and willing them to a win in week 1, that's the biggest thing, because that could be the difference for the 1 seed when we get to the playoffs, which could be the difference between who's in the Super Bowl, because like home field advantage matters that much. The Bills have the best home record in football since 2020. They win like 83% of their home games. It's insane. That's all hugely important. But the key addition, the X factor for what this team could be, is Joey Bosa, because this team has lacked that premier pass rusher. They've lacked that ability to disrupt elite quarterbacks with their pass rush in playoff situations specifically. Look at every Chiefs game. Joey Bosa's been incredible. 8 pressures in just 32 pass snaps. He's got the 4th highest pressure rate in the NFL out of all dudes to play a decent number of snaps. He's got 3 forced fumbles. Like, he's making those big-time plays. Now, he was particularly dominant against the Jets. Let's understand that context. It's the Jets, but also it was a Jets offensive line that was getting a lot of praise after week 1, right? They bring in Membu, and it's like, okay, have they overhauled that unit? And Bosa was able to get whatever he wanted in that matchup. So he's the X factor for this team. The returns have been good from him so far. I just still need to see more from this defense, which, by the way, played really well without Ed Oliver and without Taron Johnson in week 2. But again, that was against the Jets. I think the Bills are a major Super Bowl contender. I just like the top 2 teams a little bit more. So who's in your 2 spot, Logan?
So I've got the Ravens here in my 2 spot. And, I mean, I think they make an argument as the most talented team in football. I just think one team has looked more dominant all around. Lamar has one of those plays every week. He had one against Cleveland where he scrambles 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, dances between 4 guys, and then finds somebody in the end zone. He's so much fun, so great. They drubbed the Browns this last week, and they have one of the most just easy, bankable offenses ever with him and Derrick Henry. We say it all the time. It's the greatest quarterback and running back tandem ever. That leads to such easy offense with how you melt the brains of defensive fronts. They have to pick their poison. Either we're going to contain and close off the outside, or we're going to try to go hit Derrick Henry in the middle, and it's going to open up the seam for Lamar. You've got a ton of talent in the receiving core. I think that's a legitimate upgrade for Baltimore this season, having DeAndre Hopkins. I know he's not what he once was, but he's still got great hands. Him as a depth addition is huge for this team. I wish Mark Andrews could get his head out of his ass. Mark Andrews just might be washed, bro. Like, he might just suck now. I don't know what's going on with him. I think he dropped another TD this last week that just hit him in the hands. Like, I don't know, man. Get Isaiah Likely back healthy and back out there. Like, he might just be better than Andrews at this point. It could just be mental with the guy too. But defensively, this team is elite. They've got a Defensive Player of the Year caliber guy in Kyle Hamilton. I think he's the best safety in the league. You've got playmakers in the secondary. Nate Wiggins had a pick this last week. The pass rush is great. Like, I still think it's arguable that they are the most talented team in football. But ultimately, I think there's been a team that has just been more dominant through 2 weeks with some convincing wins, and I'm going to respect that. And wow, props to you, man. They have looked like the Super Bowl frontrunner, I think, through 2 weeks.
Logan, it fires me up so much to hear you say this because I've been all in on the Packers. I had them as my number 2 contender going into the year, and I'm actually going to keep them there. I'm not moving anything. My top 4 contenders are the same and in the exact same order as they were preseason. I want to do a lot of Green Bay glaze, but first I want to lay out why I have Baltimore number 1. They've scored 40 in each of their first 2 games, and they have the potential to be an elite defense. They have elite defensive talent. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. I think the Packers have the better defense, but the confidence I have in Baltimore's offense, and listen, if you want to say, hey, we got to see it translate to the playoffs, I understand that. My thing is, I think it should. I think if Lamar plays up to his potential, it will. Not only is he the best he's ever been, the group around him is the best that it's ever been, with an insane weapon like Derrick Henry, with the best group of pass catchers that he has had. You even look at D-Hop now making plays in this offense. Like, it's just so stacked. It can be so overwhelming.
Even that offensive thing that people have beaten, and I've beaten that drum for a long time, I feel like that has to be water under the bridge at this point. Like, to me, the Ravens just have to not shoot themselves in the foot and play a decent defensive game. Like the AFC title game 2 years ago against the Chiefs where you put up 10 points, you hand the ball off to running backs, 6 times? The game against Buffalo last year, you got some really bad turnovers early in that game that dig you a big hole, and then Mark Andrews drops the 2-point conversion. Like, to me, it's literally just the Ravens not beating themselves sometimes, and they feel like they should be able to just power through the AFC.
I agree. I just see a potential for them to be like an actual juggernaut that I don't see with anybody else, even though I can see it with the Packers too, like them being flat out elite on both sides of the ball. The Ravens could be one of the best offenses we've ever seen and an elite defense. Like, that ability to have a god at quarterback with now a really good infrastructure around him, with a defense that after week 11 last year was number 1 in every meaningful metric. We'll see what level the defense reaches this year, but they've been an elite run defending unit. I mean, last year they were incredible there. They're arguably the most talented secondary in football. They maybe don't have an elite pass rusher, but they still have gotten very good sack production if you look at last year. I just think they have the potential to check so many boxes and then have that superpower of offense that feels unstoppable. So, like you said, man, the Bills beat them. The Bills can do it again because they have Josh Allen at quarterback, And Josh Allen is a god. But who does it feel easier for, right? Who does it feel more replicable for? Who does it feel like if we just sort of do the fundamentals, if we just go from point A to point B to point C, we win? I think it's the Ravens. And I think that honestly stands up for the Ravens against every other team in football. I do have the Packers number 2, though, Logan. Please tell me why you have them at number 1. I'm so excited to hear this because you weren't drinking the Packers Kool-Aid with me before the season. I wanted to go down with you, Logan. Jonestown style.
Whoa,
that's how
you
it had
wanted
to
what?
Be.
What did
go
he say?
down with you.
Oh.
I'm talking about a suicide pact. It's chill.
You got a little excited. You got me a little excited.
But my actual hope, Logan, was that the Kool-Aid would just be oh so sweet and oh so delicious, and it would take us to the promised land. And that's what's happening. And right now, I'm riding that high, and now you're riding that high with me, it seems.
Yeah, you Jim Jones my ass, man. You slipped me the Packer pill in my green Kool-Aid. Yeah, I'm all with it. Honestly, my thing with the Packers preseason was I had a few big concerns. I was worried about the secondary. I didn't know if the secondary was going to be able to hold their own. They have. Keshawn Nixon looks like an absolute beast. I was worried about the defensive line being really effective, and I didn't know how healthy Micah Parsons was going to be early on in this season. The defensive front looks absolutely destructive, and adding a guy like Micah Parsons has made them even more dominant. And then my third concern was, can Jordan Love consistently look like a superstar quarterback? And he does. He is spreading the ball all over the field. He is super accurate. They are putting up points in bunches, and they're able to run the ball. Like, I considered the Packers to be a real deal contender. They were in my top 10. They were, I believe, I think they were 7th. I think they were 7th on my list behind the Commanders. They have just answered every concern that I've had about Green Bay. And so I knew they were going to be really solid, but they've gone from looking really solid to elite on both sides of the ball. And they were going to be one or two dominant performances in week 1 and week 2 to drub the Lions the way they did and to beat up on the Commanders the way they really how they dominated Washington in the trenches said a lot to me about how strong the trenches are for Green Bay. And I knew about the perimeter talent. If this team is going to be this dominant in the trenches, I think they're a juggernaut. And I'm kind of foaming at the mouth for an idea of a Packers or a Packers, Bills, Ravens Super Bowl, man. That sounds gnarly to me. But they just look flawless through 2 weeks. And maybe we'll see some flaws arise as the season goes along. I don't know, man. They look damn near perfect through 2 weeks.
They're incredible. I don't think there's any question who's been the most impressive team in football through 2 weeks. That's the Green Bay Packers. If you look at DVOA, which is sort of like the all-encompassing metric that is measuring your efficiency on both sides of the ball and accounts for difficulty of opponent, Green Bay is number 1 by so far. They're number 2 in offensive DVOA. They're number 1 in defensive DVOA. And the reason that I cite that metric specifically, which I don't usually do, is just because I think it's important to understand the context of the fact that they manhandled 2 very good teams from last year. 2 teams that were among the last 4 standing in the NFC. 2 teams that a lot of people said, oh, well, this actually just shows that they've fallen off. They suck, whatever. But if you look at the 2 games that Washington and Detroit played against non-Packers opponents, they outscored them 73-27. I mean, it was a comfortable win for Washington. It was a dominant win for Detroit over Chicago. And yet Green Bay has taken these elite offenses from last year and held them to 48 yards per game on the ground and 2.4 yards per attempt on the ground. Both of those are top 2 marks. They're allowing 4.3 net passing yards per attempt. That's the best in the NFL. Their defense is just incredible. I've said this a lot, but they already had elite defensive scheme. Now they have elite defensive talent. When you insert a Micah Parsons, who has 11 pressures and 59 pass snaps, he is game-breaking. He is the player this defense needed to take them over the top and the player this team needed to take them over the top because the defense is just absolutely ridiculous right now. But also the totality of the group I do think was underrated coming into the year. They have 5 guys with multiple tackles for loss already. They are just living in the backfield. Like, they're elite at everything on defense. I genuinely think that they are now that they have a pass rusher like Micah Parsons, who, by the way, is helping everybody else eat, right? Rashawn Gary has 2.5 sacks through 2 games. And then offensively, the biggest thing that we were looking at is, okay, how much can they open up the passing attack, become more dynamic there, because we know LaFleur is great, the run game is great, the offensive line is quite good. What sort of volume and production can they get through the air? Well, they've been incredibly efficient there. Jordan Love is averaging 8.9 completed air yards per completion. That is number one in football. The extent to which he is picking people apart deep downfield, over the middle, like it's a level up from where it was at last year. And so there's an explosiveness to this passing attack and this offense that is a level up from last year. And he's only taken 2 sacks, one of the best in football at not being brought to the ground, not taking negative plays, drive-killing plays like that. So you just look at everything, both sides of the ball. It's humming. It's well done. They have the talent. They have the coaching. They have the execution. They're incredible defending the run, and they're incredible defending the pass. They are really good at running the football. I think they can tap into their potential even more so there. And right now, they're really good at throwing the football. They're just an incredibly complete team. Like, I do think there's a strong argument that if you just go box to box, they're the most complete team in football. The only reason I don't have them number one, and it is very close, is just because of the actual god tier playmakers in Baltimore's offense. Having a Lamar Jackson, having a Derrick Henry, even a Zay Flowers, I believe is better than any pass catcher for the Packers. That's the only thing. And as much as I like Jordan Love and I like this offense, there is still a gap there. We've seen 2 great games from Jordan Love, and I'm a believer in his, right? I had him as a top 10 quarterback. I had him as a dark horse MVP candidate. That's my guy. I don't think we can deny that it's more of a question mark if you're going to get high-level play from him consistently week after week in some of these playoff spots. So that's the only reason that I don't have them higher. It's just because I think they and the Ravens are both special, but even though I think the Packers offense is very good, it can never be what the Ravens offense can be, and that's what it comes down to.
I think it makes sense. I do like the structure of the Packers offense. It doesn't feel like anybody's overtasked or anything. There are a lot of guys who can be productive. If it's Dobbs, if it's Wicks, if it's Musgrave, if it's Kraft. Love has spread the hell out of the ball, and they got a solid running game too. I understand it though. It makes sense, and nobody's been able to stop the Ravens offense for an entire year now. So I do think it's ambitious. Think about slowing them completely down. But I do think these are the 2 best teams in football. That has definitely been my conclusion after 2 weeks.
I agree. I still think that the Bills are right there just because I have so much confidence in the offense and the quarterback play, but the Packers' defensive edge does offset that. But it's still close. The Eagles, the all-around roster is there. But, yeah, we've talked about all the issues with the offense and the passing attack right now. Packers, wildly impressive, outstanding, absolutely living up to my expectations. Unfortunately, Jaden Reed is hurt right now, so hopefully that doesn't end up being too big a thing. Hopefully they can connect on some of these big explosive passing plays with Matthew Golden, where we saw a couple opportunities there last week. Tucker Kraft has been awesome for them. I like the Packers receiving room in totality. I want to be clear. I like everything about their offense. And yet you think about what the Ravens can do, absolutely mowing teams down, and it's just a little bit different. But I like you having Green Bay at number 1, man. I considered it. I think that they're outstanding, and I'd love that Super Bowl. I'd love watching that Super Bowl. I'd prefer a Packers-Bills Super Bowl, obviously, but very impressive stuff from the top tier of these NFL teams. So there you have it, our contender rankings, our thoughts on the best of the best. We hope you enjoyed that. And we hope you've enjoyed the football so far. And we hope that you enjoy our yapping about it. And if you do, you know where to find us. We've got all of our content right here on our YouTube channel, all of our NFL stuff, all of our NBA stuff, all of our trivia stuff. It lives here. You can also find all of our full episodes across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can also join our Discord if you want to chat with the gang and be part of our community over there. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.